you just read a book and it's all of a sudden, okay, I'm in the third, I get it. Well, you have to again, intentionality, you have to practice it.
What is your advice to young people who want to get into professional sports?
Take responsibility for everything, even if it's not obvious, even if it's clearly 99% somebody else's fault, find a way to take responsibility for it so you can keep improving.
What are the 3 key ingredients to becoming a successful leader?
A coach is just a professional student. You need to always be learning.
How would you kind of build your skills, and how would you develop those skills to become a leader? All right, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we help empower tomorrow's leaders through sharing of knowledge, inspiring stories and experiences. I'm your host, Rob Cameronport, and my special guest today is Zach Carlin. He's the co-founder of Summit Chasers. He's a professional athlete, and he was a fighter, and he's also an entrepreneur. I'll let Zach kind of introduce himself a little bit more and, dig deeper into what he's doing and what he's done in the past. But before that, I'd like to thank you, Zach, for taking the time to be with me today. I greatly appreciate it, and I look forward to our discussion today.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I wanted to announce something really quickly before we get started. So you were on my podcast about a month ago. And I wanted to announce it was actually our top performing podcast for February. Wow. In February alone, I think it was only about 20 days in February too, when we had about 2,900 downloads, which was our top performing for that month. So I mean, it's not a lot compared to a lot of other podcasts, but for us, it was good. So I wanted to give you some props. So if you haven't listened to that already, check it out. It was awesome.
Awesome, thank you. I'm humbled to hear that, and hopefully we can repeat that, Zach.
Let's go.
All right. So why don't we start off? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you grew up?
Yeah, so I'm Canadian. Grew up in a small town in Canada. I'm a country kid. People don't really, if they meet me, that's usually the last thing they think. But yeah, small town, Claresholm, Alberta, Canada. At the time, there's about 900 people in the town. If you count surrounding area, there might be a couple thousand or something like that. But it was a very, very small community. And typical Canadian. I grew up with skates on. I came out of the womb with skates on. But I also did karate. I was a black belt in karate before by the time I was 8 years old, I was a black belt in karate. Before that, I tap danced. So I was at a very young age, I was kind of the black sheep of the town kind of thing. If you didn't play hockey or work on the oil rigs or on a farm, you're kind of like, what's going on here? A little bit weird. But I grew up kind of the black sheep, but I did get into hockey, and I grew up playing hockey until I was about 13 years old. And then that's when I got my first soiree into boxing. And we had a gym teacher who used to teach us boxing. Kind of, we called it like our little fight club, because we weren't really allowed to do that, especially at that age. But we would go after school, and he would teach us how to box, the basics and that kind of stuff. And we'd beat each other up, and people wonder where our black eyes came from. It's like, I fell, it's fine. So that was kind of my first, I would say that was my first kind of passion, I think, was like the martial arts, right? Karate, and then into boxing. But I still played hockey and that kind of thing. And from there, I just kind of, unbeknownst to my parents, actually, I would travel to the closest city, and I would keep training in kickboxing and mixed martial arts. And that was in 2005, something like that, 2004 or 5. Like, that sport was very taboo. Like, that was not cool. Like, it was human cockfighting at that time, and it wasn't that far off. The rules are a lot different now. And so again, it just kind of pushed me towards being more of the black sheep of the town sort of thing, right? And then I ended up quitting playing hockey, and when I was 16, 17 years old, and I was good. Like, I played on the U15, so the U16 Canada team, or redshirted for them. So I was good. So when I gave that up, it was a big shock to a lot of people. And in a small town like that, there wasn't much else to do. So we lived kind of right by the Rocky Mountains, and there was a highway. It was called Crow's Nest Pass, and it was owned by I'm not going to name who they were, but they were by a gang, and it's Hell's Angels, whatever. I don't think any of them are listening. But the meth was very prevalent, and also like with the oil rigs and stuff so close, that was kind of the drug of choice, is help keep them awake. And the roughnecks stay working long hours, and they didn't have anything else to do either when they were working on the rig. So meth was really prominent, and ecstasy was very prominent there. And I ended up getting involved with the wrong crowds. Just again, you kind of lean into when you're being told what you are, like you don't fit in. You feel like you don't fit in. You tend to lean into that especially when you're a young age. You don't have the plethora of mentors to seek out. And there wasn't the internet. I mean, there was the internet in that small town. We actually didn't have the internet until I was about 19 or 18 years old. But there wasn't much support other than my boxing coach and parents. But again, when you're that age, your parents don't know anything, right?
That's right.
So I ended up getting pretty heavily involved in drugs at that point. And then I ended up my senior year in high school. I don't probably count on these two hands how many days I actually showed up to school. Went down a pretty dark path, but I always kept training in like MMA. Like I always kind of kept in shape, and as much shape as you can be in when you're doing extracurricular activities like that. But it always kind of kept me right on the edge. It always was kind of that thing that kept me right there. So and again, you become more of a black sheep in a place like this, and then people, start to find out some certain things, and you get more alienated, and you get kind of pushed a little bit further. At least you feel like you're getting pushed further into a corner type of thing. So I ended up not graduating high school. I moved away from the town to an even worse spot. Worked for a little bit doing construction for a little bit, but then I ended up getting, even more involved in the wrong crowd, and ended up to the point where I did not have a place to live for a short period of time. So by the time I was 18, I was homeless and fairly addicted to the drugs. And I didn't have one particular. It was just something that whatever made the voices in my head quiet the most, kind of thing. And it was interesting because I don't think I'd be where I was if I didn't go through that. So as much as this sounds like a woo woo, like, okay, you went through some hard times and whatever that is, I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through that. I think I needed to go through that, to do the things, to be uncomfortable, be comfortable being uncomfortable type of thing.
That's right.
So, and I still had that boxing coach. It was not my gym teacher at this time. I had a different boxing coach, and his name was Gord. Still don't know his last name. It's just Gord. And if you looked at him, it fit it fit the bill. And I was back in town at this point, and I was sleeping in one of those kind of horizontal tube slide things. And I was laying back. It was yellow, and I had my feet hanging out. And back then they had, like the sharp rock gravel on playgrounds still back then. And I could hear somebody come up, didn't bother moving. And this is very vivid to me. And then he kicks me in the calf. And if anybody's been kicked in the calf just below your knee, it stings, it hurts. So I got up, I started screaming, like swearing and this kind of stuff. I got mad, and he's like, dude, calm down. You are in like, he gave me such a stern, like, you're in a terrible place. You have all this potential, all the stuff like you hear before.
Yeah.
Like your parents say you're wasting all this potential. Or people at the grocery store even like, oh, it's too bad your kid had all this potential, kind of thing. And he yelled all this stuff that I've heard before, except for one thing, well, two things really. But the one that really stuck with me was, you got to start taking responsibility for these things that you're blaming everybody else on. And we hear that a lot from our parents, but what made it different when I was like, yeah, okay, I need to go get a job, I need to get my shit, I get it. I need to take responsibility for stuff. It's not everything's everybody else's fault. He's like, no, you don't get it. You need to intentionally take responsibility at all times. Like even the stuff when it's not obvious, like you need to learn to start taking responsibility for these things. And I didn't really conceptualize that until honestly I started talking about it more on these podcasts, and how impactful that has been on me, but also just that the lesson of intentionality behind most things, not just taking responsibility, but a lot of things, how we grow, how we learn, how we communicate, our relationships, who we choose to, put in our network, in our circles. It's like we have the ability to be intentional, to change the status quo, to improve upon things that have been, consistent for a long period of time, good or bad. So that stuck with me. But again, I never really conceptualized it until fairly recently. But that had a huge impact on my life ever since then. So And that's really what changed everything, was just me admitting, like, okay, it's not everybody's fault that I'm a black sheep. It's the stuff I'm doing. Like I'm acting like that, right?
That's right.
And it's just, and it's not that I'm weird. I have to take responsibility that I have different likes and things that passions. I have different passions than other people in this town, and that's okay. And I have to take responsibility for feeling weird about it or feeling a way about it. It's not their fault, right? So when I did that, that's really what changed a lot for me, I think. And I initially blamed it on, or attributed it to, he said, you got to get a job and all this kind of stuff, which, you hear a million times. I'm like, yeah, I know. Just that seems really far away. Like, who would hire me right now? It's like, don't worry about that. Let's just go get a shirt, dude. Let's go get a new shirt. So we went, that was the next thing we did, was we went to the bargain store and bought a shirt. It wasn't the best shirt choice. It was like a red shirt with one of those yellow smiley faces on it. It's like stupid. Who's going to hire me with that? But it was $2.99. So whatever. And so I bought a shirt, got breakfast, and then that's what really kind of got me out of a funk. I'll call it a funk. Compared to other people's issues, that was just a funk, right? But that's what got me out of it. And then I just poured myself into martial arts at that point. And that's what kind of got me out of it, I think, was the martial arts itself.
Nice.
That's how I grew up.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. And you and I have talked about this before, and I greatly appreciate you sharing that story. For me, I think it's stories like this that really stick with people, and it draws them in because people can relate. There's a lot of people struggling through difficult times and not knowing how to find that way out. That taking that intentional responsibility, like you said, and they just play the victim card. Or the world hates me, my family hates me, my friends hate. Like it's all about everyone else except themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where you can win a lot of people over, when you say, hey, I went through this that you might be going through, and look where I ended up because I put in the work.
Yeah.
I want to take you back to the point where you got into the drugs, and you got into the dark side. What do you think your mindset was like for you to be dragged into that part? Because I do talk about mindset and leadership, and I always say that your mindset has to be fixed first before you can do anything else. I want to get your thoughts on, what do you think your mindset was then, and how did you end up in that dark place?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think it comes down to, again, you almost admit at some point, you admit that you have no control over anything. Mm-hmm. So then everything else, whether how you feel better, how you feel bad, and everything in between, is you need an outside source. Like you have no control. Like you're just to completely admit that you have no control over anything. And if you admit that, then you're just kind of going with the flow, right? And I think the mindset that brought me into it was, again, just blaming everybody else, and the feeling of not fitting in. It was this person's fault. It was because a teacher said this, or I feel like I don't fit in because my hockey team didn't do well this year, so I probably don't deserve to be playing hockey, type of thing, or I shouldn't be playing hockey. And again, you put it on everybody else, and then in order to feel better, same thing, you put it on external sources to help you feel better. And that's just a form of escapism, a form of avoidance. So you go to, again, I didn't have my parents. First of all, I want to say this: my parents are absolutely fucking amazing. This had nothing to do with how they raised me. They are incredible people. I would not be where I am today. I wouldn't have survived, honestly, if it wasn't for them. But I didn't have those. I didn't take into consideration the mentors that I had. Maybe is a better way to put it. So I thought that I had to go elsewhere, right? As opposed to looking inward, I looked outward to avoid these things, to make myself feel better, and that was what was readily available, which was you get into the wrong crowd, drugs, and then that was it. And then it was just kind of chasing that dragon, or maybe running away from the dragon. Since then, and it just spirals, and it's just easier too. It's so much easier. Like, who wants to ask those questions? Who wants to take responsibility for things? Like, it's not an easy thing to do, to ask those questions of yourself, and it's even harder to answer them honestly. Like, why am I like this? Whose fault is it? Oh, it's mine. Why is it my fault? Like that's a tough one. It's a tough pill to swallow when you finally answer it correctly. And then you do answer it correctly, but maybe you're not ready to hear the answer yet. Then what do? You go and escape elsewhere. So that it was really that kind of snowball effect, that mindset that it gets you in there, but then even worse, it's what keeps you in there.
That's right. That's right. So now again, looking back at those times, Zach, what did you learn the most from that period?
What did I learn the most from that period? I mean, some of these are going to sound pretty cliche, but you're a product of your surroundings, first of all, but you are responsible for your surroundings, right? Is to take responsibility for those surroundings. And then, again, I'm going to keep coming back to, like, you have to intentionally take responsibility for those things. Like, it's just like, you just feel so powerless if you don't. And you can't, we chase such short-sighted fixes for things.
Yeah.
And those, most of the time, only make the big thing, the issue, worse. Like, we're just going after symptoms. And I think that this was kind of a big takeaway, was if you focus on the symptom, like if your knee hurts, you take Tylenol, or you're taking anti-inflammatory, whatever it is, my knee hurts. You just keep doing that, it's just going to make it worse. Like, you're not actually taking care of the cause. The cause could be that, you have an issue with your foot, the shoes that you're wearing, you're sitting too much, you have a problem with your hip or your back, whatever it is. But if you just focus on the symptom, it's just going to get worse, right? So if I'm just focusing on, I feel like this right now, I feel like I don't belong here right now, so I'm going to make a short-sighted decision to numb it right now, it just makes the cause worse.
Yeah.
It'll make the symptom worse because you're not focusing on the cause. So there's always looking at things from that perspective. Like, okay, am I dealing with a symptom right now, or is this the cause? And then if it's just a symptom, okay, what is the cause, right? And that was probably a big, kind of a big, like, and then that's also always evolving. That's always evolving. Like, you always kind of have to remind yourself of that. But that was probably a big thing, definitely a big thing that I took away from that.
Awesome. Now, let's get out of the dark spot and let's come back, to something more happy. Tell us about the professional athlete days. And, I know you were competing in, like, I guess 3 different sports, if I'm not mistaken. How did you decide to pursue, like, professional sports versus any other kind of job that was in front of you?
Yeah. I'm a little crazy. Let's say that. No, it's, I think I was always a very good I was always an athlete. I was always a very gifted athlete, right? And again, I started dancing. There's one of our pooches. I grew up, literally at 3 years old, I was tap dancing, so I knew how to move my body really well. And then I got into karate, which you learn, the athleticism that involves is immense, right? So by the time I was 8, I was a black belt. So that was always my identity, I guess. It was just being an athlete. Like, I did, and again, in a small town, I did track. I competed. I went to nationals, not nationals, provincials for badminton. Even I played basketball a year, played football and hockey, obviously, and boxing and martial arts. So it was just always my thing. It's always kind of what I thought I was meant to do. It's the only thing I thought I could be good at the time, because that was the one place that I would excel, right? And it also, I think, with martial arts, it was the thing that got me out of the spot I was in. So I always felt like I owed a debt to it, right? And I kind of felt that this was all I could. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is all I'm probably going to be good at. So, and I did love it. It was a lot of fun, and I got a lot of good lessons out of it. The discipline, and learning, failure is part of life, right? And getting hits part of life. It's how you get up, right? Rocky, everyone knows that Rocky quote. But with martial arts, again, it was, and I also kind of leaned into the fact that it was different. Like, that, not like nobody in my town, maybe one other person in my town even knew what it was at the time, right? So I kind of leaned into that a little bit. But essentially, it's the thing that got me out of where I was at. So then when I was 19, I got a job at a swimming pool as a lifeguard. And at the time, I was using that money so I could travel to the city and train. And I got pretty good for Southern Alberta, Canada at the time in 2008 or so. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, right? If I'm going to do it, I'm going to go for it, right? Because I'm not like a half-ass kind of guy.
Nice.
And I had a sister that just moved to Las Vegas. And so I was like, well, I was thinking of either moving to Montreal, and then I found out she was moving to Vegas. So I was like, okay, either Montreal or Las Vegas. And I was like, I'm kind of sick of winter. And also, what 19-year-old kid, almost 20-year-old kid would say no to Vegas?
Yeah.
So I went to Vegas. I moved to Vegas when I was just turned 20. I moved to Las Vegas. Not a great place to move when you're just getting clean, might I add. But we were fine. And I trained at Extreme Couture. And at that time, that was where the top guys were. That was the mecca. It's still the mecca for fighting, but that was at that time it was the mecca for like the training as well. Like some of the greatest gyms were there. So I got to train with guys like Vitor Belfort, Forrest Griffin, Randy Couture, Brock Lesnar was in there.
Nice.
Thiago Alves, Michael Chandler was just starting out at the time. Martin Kampman, there's a ton of them. And again, I thought I was good in Southern Alberta. Got there, I wasn't very good. I got beat up a lot, Rob. And which is, again, that's where, again, just the ego getting squashed over and over again. But it's not just that. It's when your ego gets squashed, how do you build it back up? How do you build up? How do you replace ego with confidence? And that's what I did. And I ended up being pretty good. I competed for 3 years, a lot of it professionally. And back then it was very easy to be professional. Like you could just show up to a bar and they pay you $500 and you could, fight and say you're professional. So I fought for about 3 years in Vegas, 2.5, 3 years in Vegas. And then I got injured. It was wrestling. I thought I could compete with a Division I All-American wrestler as a Canadian. No, it's different. They're a different thing. They're a different breed. And he pulled my femur out of place. So I dislocated my hip. And so I had a contract with a fight promotion called SCC at the time. They've been gone for more than 10 years now, but they were keeping me in the country. And when you're not fighting, you're useless to them, which is business decision. So I ended up I tell people I got kicked out of the country, but we just messed up on some paperwork. And I ended up having to go back to Canada. And my wife at the time, and now ex-wife, moved to Canada with me. And as I was getting back into shape, I got into CrossFit. And I didn't know you could compete in CrossFit. I didn't know it was a sport that you could compete in. I didn't know it was a thing. And still a lot of people don't know, which is fine. But anyways, right. I just started doing it just to kind of get back into shape. And then they were like, you're pretty good at this. Why don't you just do, like, there's a local competition, just sign up for it. It's fun, whatever. And I got second and I won $1,100. And I was like, this is as much as I won, but getting hit in the head. Like, this is so much better. I'm just going to do this. Like, and like, I had realized that I had got what I needed out of martial arts. And I wasn't, that's not a sport. If you're not 100, if you're 99% in, get 100% out. It's just not one of those sports. Right. And I was 99% in. So I got out and I'm going to compete in CrossFit for a little bit, see how it goes. And that was kind of when both my business mindset started to kick in. That was kind of when it started to flourish. And then also I started to compete in that. And 4 years later after that, I traveled the world competing. I was a sponsored athlete. I was on billboards. I competed in Dubai, Brazil, France, all over the US, all over Canada. And I did very well at it. And nice. I used that as kind of a platform as I was working my way up, as a platform to get into business. I was more of a hobbyist entrepreneur. So I bought into a couple gyms. I remember the first day I went into we had a meeting. It was a P&L meeting. We're going over our profit and loss statements. And I was like, we have like 200 members. They pay about $180 a month on average. I'm like, we are rolling in it. I cannot wait to cut myself a check. It's not how it works. Not how it works, apparently. So that was 2013 or 14 now. I think it was a little over 10 years ago, I think. And I just remember sitting there. I'm like, how do I make that number go up? Like it was in the green, but it was like single digit. It was not good. It was not like we could have went to Starbucks maybe. And I was like, how do we make this number go up? This doesn't make any sense to me. So I got obsessed with making that number go up. And at the time, how you learned was a lot different than now. Even 10 years ago, YouTube was a lot different. The resources you could get were a lot different. Marketing was a lot different. So I just got obsessed with how to make the P&L statement go up. So looking into, increasing profit per square footage in a boutique facility, brick and mortar boutique facility like that, marketing, partnerships, how to negotiate, how to sell. Selling in fitness, I think, is one of the best foundations for learning how to sell, because it's tied to a possibility to get what you want, not a money or something, not money or a product or something like that. So I learned, again, I just got obsessed with these things, and then I ended up flipping for profit half a dozen gyms, boutique gyms in 4 years. And
Nice.
I got that. I didn't want to say I got a system, but I learned some tactics and strategies to make small, brick and mortar facilities profitable. And then I got anyways, you're talking about sports. And then after at that period, now we moved to Edmonton. I got partnered up with a company. We wanted to sell fitness equipment all around the country, and they brought me in as kind of the, you can promote this, and we can kind of build a fitness facility on the side of it, and you can help us, build this company. And I just got so burnt out trying to do both, because I realized my passion wasn't necessarily the competing anymore. It was the business. It was the business side of things. And we did really well. It was one of those things that we didn't do well, it would have been weird. So it was a fitness equipment company, but they had a kind of a mothership company that was a logistics, like they did freight logistics throughout the whole country. So we had a built-in infrastructure, like send this stuff all over the country. So if we didn't grow out the way we did, like we went from 1.8 to a little over 20 million in about 3 years, it would have been weird if we didn't do that. Like it was set up to the point where it's like, that would have been weird if we didn't. But we scaled it, and again, I just got burnt out. I just couldn't do both anymore. Especially again, if you're trying to put so much energy into to like be a great athlete, like that needs to take 100% of your time, because if you're not, you're going to get hurt.
Yep.
You're gonna waste money. You're gonna waste time. It's just not good, and then both sides suffer. So I realized that I needed to focus just on this part of it, and I realized the relationship I was in too with the co-founders of that company wasn't great, and I had made my exit, and we decided to move back to the States, start over again. And that's when I was like, okay, but I still have an itch. I'm still a competitor though. I have an itch. And it was really hard for me to work out and stay in shape without competing for something at that time now. So I got into strongman, and I ended up qualifying for a professional strongman competition. So I was technically a professional athlete in 3 different sports at that time. So
that's amazing, Zach. Well, that's a great story, and I love that. And I want you to think about now the kind of mindset you need to become an athlete, and how did you translate that into the business world?
Well, that's a great question, and that's one I've reflected on quite a bit. And it's, I think for me and for everybody, and there's a lot that's been in that scenario before, right? But I think for me, it was the concept that everything has to work together. Like if one piece over here moves, it can create a domino effect over here. So for example, when you're an athlete, how you sleep affects your performance. What you eat affects your performance. The stress that you carry outside affects your performance. How you recover, how you warm up, your training, your nutrition, your everything has an effect, big or small, on the performance, on the outcome you're trying to achieve. And the idea that you can do everything right. I could have the best training camp on the planet ever, eat perfectly, recover, do everything perfectly, and I still might not get the outcome I wanted. Somebody might beat me. There could be somebody there better than me, and I had to deal with that. So it wasn't so much when that does happen, it was understanding that I can't just go back and keep doing more of what I'm doing. Somebody who beat me is doing something different. Not just like, so it's this whole thing of like, if your input equals your output, sometimes just more of the same input doesn't equal more output.
Yep.
Sometimes you need different input to get more output. So it was creating kind of these feedback loops of, okay, if this was my training, this was my recovery, this was my stress levels, this is what I did on the outside, and I got this result, this person beat me. Okay, now what can I either take, what kind of lessons can I learn from that, and what can I improve, what can I do differently to at least improve the chances that I'll get the outcome I want. And it's the same thing in business. You could have the best strategy, you could try to hire the best people, you could you try to be the best leader, you could try to be the most effective communicator, you could all these things, the best marketing tools, the best CRM, whatever it is, you can do all these things. There's still a chance you might not achieve the outcome. And when that doesn't happen, have the feedback loops ready to make the adjustments and do something different. Don't necessarily always just think, okay, we need to do more of the same thing.
Yes.
I think that's kind of that was a lot, I guess, but there are so many similarities. There's so many concepts that are translatable, right? And I think that gives athletes a little bit, I don't want to say an upper hand, but a different angle.
Yep. No, that's amazing. That's a great answer there. I want you to think about the two words discipline and determination.
Mhm.
Why are these important?
Ooh, I like it. And I actually, this might be a hot take, but I actually think discipline's extremely important. I think it's huge, right? But I don't think it's as big of a factor as people think. And hear me out here. We need discipline. So think of habits, right? And how our subconscious mind and our habits work, right? When we are creating new habits or getting rid of bad habits, right? You absolutely need determination and discipline in order to get started and overcome those things
Correct.
in the beginning. If you want to exercise, if you want to get in better shape, you buy a gym membership and you show up for 6 weeks. That 6 weeks you need discipline. You need determination to get into the gym for those 6 weeks, right? After that, I mean, and the time frame might be different for everybody, but for this example, it's 6 weeks. 6 weeks goes by. All of a sudden, it's turning into a habit. Now you feel weird if you don't go to the gym. So that doesn't necessarily need discipline anymore. Now it would require discipline if you wanted to, okay, I want to start going 5 times a week instead of 3, or I want to start doing harder exercises, more challenging exercises as opposed to the same stuff I was doing. That will require discipline to create those habits and push through as your body adjusts, right? But the idea of this constant discipline, like you're hitting your head against the wall all the time, is not, in my opinion, is not true. I think you have the discipline at first, you create the habit, and then you need to take that discipline and allocate it somewhere else to keep growing.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So but discipline, you're just hitting the same nail all the time, then I would think that would actually be the opposite of discipline. Right? It's okay, now how can I grow? How can I intentionally, if I want to achieve something better, how can I intentionally change these habits, take responsibility, and point that discipline somewhere else that'll help me keep growing and moving forward, type of thing. So I think that's kind of that. I mean, that's initially what comes to mind when I think of discipline. It's just and then but the determination, I mean, really, that when things are hard, like you don't feel well, or work is getting busier, or something doesn't quite go your way, the determination comes when things don't go as planned, but you need to keep moving forward anyway. So you can't take a day off. Like, oh, this deal didn't go through. All right, let's just go have a drink. Let's just go, wallow in our sorrows right now. Determination is, okay, let's find another one. Like determination is hitting your head against that wall until it breaks. And you need to have a good balance of both.
Beautiful. Well, that's well said. And I say the same thing because discipline is something that you need to start building that habit, and it's transferable because today you wanna build this good habit of eating properly. Then it's stopping smoking. Then it's stopping drinking. Then it's going to the gym. Whatever it is, you do need that discipline to get you there, to build that habit.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think
it takes a lot
and
of
people
focus.
think of discipline as 100%, and people think of discipline as discipline in doing other things or doing more things. It's also the discipline in not doing the things that are getting in your way. It's also the discipline of taking things out, of saying no to things too. Like that, that is just as much. It's not just about adding on, okay, I also have to go to the gym now. It's the discipline in, okay, keeping that time open on your calendar, right? And moving it, working things around it, prioritizing it. So there's, people think, again, they don't want to think discipline is just adding more things to your calendar. It's also prioritizing things. It's the discipline in your priorities.
That's right. And also saying no, like you said, is very important, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about entrepreneurship. So you've been an entrepreneur. Do you believe that all entrepreneurs can be leaders?
I don't. I think they can. I think anybody can be. It's not. I don't believe that being a leader is necessarily something that you're born with. You can be born with attributes that'll make it. You might have a head start. You might be more likely to be more naturally inclined to be a leader, to have people that'll follow you. That could be a good or a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think if you want to be an entrepreneur, that is a burden you have to take on, and you have to be aware of that, and you have to be willing to do that. And I think entrepreneurs that think they don't need to be leaders, they're setting themselves up for failure, or they're just not, they're setting themselves up to not have the success that they want. And maybe you could be an entrepreneur and just not want to have anybody in your team, just run an e-commerce online, and then you're fine. I mean, technically you're an entrepreneur at that point. But your willingness of what you're going to put into it has to match the goal. If your goal is to run, a big company, right? Your willingness to work on the skills to be a leader, to develop people, to multiply yourself has to be equal, if not greater, to the goal that you set out. Right. So if you're somebody who just says that, hey, I want to run $100 million company, but I don't want to be a leader, you don't actually want to run $100 million company. You just want to have $100 million. Those are different things.
Yes.
Right. So I think they have to be a leader to the extent of the goal that they want to achieve.
So again, let's say you're an entrepreneur and you do want to become a leader. How would you kind of build your skills, and how would you develop those skills to become a leader personally?
First thing is communication. Well, first thing is admitting that communication is a skill that you can get better at. Right? We can absolutely improve it. And like we have, so in our framework, like we have the Summit Laws of Leadership, and 5 of them are directly correlated to your ability to communicate. Right. So if you're wanting that success, and you understand that I need to be a great leader, I need to be able to communicate. And also being a leader it's not just about leading the people that are on your team, right? You have to be able to, like, you're creating partnerships out there. You're putting, you're representing your company. You're representing the core values of your company, representing the mission of your company. You have to be able to be a positive influence to the community, to the people that you want to bring in.
Yeah.
Right. So that's also your clients, your market, the partnerships that you're going to build, your customers, and obviously the people that are going to be on your team. So it's not just this linear, I just need to know how to tell people what to do. Yes. Right. You need to be able to communicate to in many different ways. So one of my favorite laws is understanding that everybody has a different map. So everybody has a different map of how they got to where they are. Right. We're all, like you and me right now, we're sitting on the same X, right, in our maps, but our path to get here is a lot different. So the way you intake information and the way you receive information, the way you give information is based on your experience, your map, how you grew up, the mentors you had, the trauma you experienced, all these kind of the successes that you had. That's how you conceptualize things, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're a leader, you need to be able to communicate to many different maps, to many different types of people to get the same outcome. So your ability to communicate, the skill set that you have to communicate effectively to many different people to get the same outcome is probably going to be one of the biggest indicators of your success growing people, growing team, growing an ideology. Right.
Awesome. Now you talked about communication quite a bit. In your opinion, what's the most important aspect of communication?
Oh God, there's so many. That's a good question, my friend. Where do I want to start? I think it's as a leader. Yeah, no, that's 100%. No, I think as a leader is understanding your communication. This is actually law number 1 for us is understanding that communication is not for you, it's for them. It's for the people that you're communicating to. So a lot of people tend to communicate in the I. So I'm going to communicate so I'm bought into what I'm saying, so I understand what I'm saying. Did I sound good? Did that make sense to me? So I think just understanding that I'm communicating for them to achieve an outcome. I'm communicating for them to achieve success. I'm communicating to them to accomplish the goal, not for it to make sense to me, right? So that, I think understanding that and going in with that mindset is key, because then it trickles into following up with people better and understanding people better. Okay, that didn't hit with you. You didn't understand that, obviously, or didn't conceptualize it right, obviously. So how do you like to be communicated to? How did you feel when I communicated that to you? What did you think I meant? Or, whatever it is, right? I think if you understand that, it's a good foundation to build upon better communication skills. And just understanding people, empathy, right?
That's right. So how important is listening then, Zach?
So, it's 90% of your communication. Well, 93% of communication is not even verbal, right? So you need to be able to listening is everything. Listening is everything. Because again, if you don't listen, then you don't know how to get across. What's the best way I can communicate with this person to get the outcome? And listening and paying attention are two different things. Listening,
Yes.
I'm hearing the words that you say, I'm hearing the tonality. But if I'm paying attention, I'm seeing your body language. I'm paying attention to your tonality with your body language. I'm paying attention to a lot more, right, at that point. So listening is great, but paying attention. So there's another law. This is great. I'm going through all these laws. Law number 3 or 4. We switched them. I can't remember. I think it's 4. Is I know a leader has to communicate in the third or the fourth. So the third is being the observer. So if you and me are talking, and I'm trying to get an outcome for you, or I'm trying to, verbalize a new, mission statement that we have, or a new initiative that we have, I want to communicate in the third, because then I'm saying, how is what I'm saying affecting you, and is what you're saying affecting me. So I'm looking at it from a third party perspective. I'm just looking at it like, okay, is this person creating the outcome that we need to accomplish the goal? How's my body language affecting them? What state are they in? What state am I in? Or they seem a little stressed. So how can I maybe change? Maybe I can sit back a little bit more and seem a little bit more relaxed, so they seem more relaxed. I'm going to tone my tone down a little bit. I'm not going to upspeak as much, so they don't feel as threatened or whatever it is. So it's being able to converse, to communicate in that third perspective to create the outcome. Yeah.
Interesting. And you probably need a lot of self-awareness for that, to do that. Right?
It takes practice. Like, this isn't one of those things you just read a book and it's all of a sudden, okay, I in the third, I get it. No, you have to again, intentionality. You have to practice it, right? So yeah, it takes time.
I love that word. So thank you again, Zach. We've come to that time where we're close to wrapping up the show. But before we do, I've got this segment, which is called rapid fire questions. So I'll ask you a series of questions, and the first thing that comes to your head, just shoot it out, and we'll take it from there. So first one is, what is your advice to young people who want to get into professional sports?
First of all, understand why you want to do it, and make sure that you are 100% in, and you have the support to do so. If you're not 100% you're passionate about the sport, if it's not a sport that you keep coming back to, that you go to sleep thinking about, you wake up thinking about, and you're willing to make the sacrifices, you're able to make the sacrifices, then don't do it. Don't do it. But if that is the case, and be honest, if that is the case, then you have to be willing to make sacrifices and go all in, and it's going to be a lot harder than you think. We see highlight reels all over the place. Don't watch Rocky. Don't watch Creed. Don't watch any of those. That's bullshit. It's not how it goes. It's going to suck. And if you're okay with that and you want to go through with it, good.
Nice. So the other piece is, what is your advice to the parents?
Of kids. Oh, God. I'd be honest with them, just like I just was. Be honest with them. But if they are adamant, and they are 100%, if they show the proof in the pudding, they do the work, back them up. Because if you, especially depending on the sport, especially if it's a sport where the repercussions are great, like martial arts or anything like that, if you put an inkling of doubt in their head,
yes,
it's game over. It's game over, and they could get seriously hurt. They could get really, really hurt if their head's out of whack and they go to a sparring session, right? Like, things can go wrong. Even in hockey or football or anything like that, you don't want to put any doubt in their mind. You want them to be 100% mindset the whole time. Just it's 10 times more important than the physical stuff. You have to feed them. Your food bill is going to go up. Sorry, but that's nowhere near as important as just keep as much doubt out of their head as possible.
Excellent. Now, what are the 3 key ingredients to becoming a successful leader, in your opinion?
I'm going to keep saying this over and over again, but intentionally take responsibility for everything, even if it's not obvious, even if it's clearly 99% somebody else's fault. Find a way to take responsibility for it so you can keep improving. If you don't, you're going to stop improving, and you're admitting you have no control over anything. The third would be practice your listening chops, right? Even for coaches, I say this to some of our clients that are coaches. A coach is just a professional student. You need to always be learning, right? Always be learning. And then for the third one, There's a few that I'm kind of going back and forth between in my head, but a leader has to have a healthy relationship with the window and the mirror. And by that, I mean, when things go right, point out the window. We did that. Good job, guys. This was on you. When things go wrong, we point in the mirror. That was on me. I got to take responsibility for that. That wasn't on you. I messed up somewhere. I did not, explain things right, or I didn't set you up for success. And then a fourth bonus, always set your successors up for success. You should always be looking at replacing, how can I replace myself? And maybe not your entire role, but how can I replace, some aspects of my role? How can I build people up? How can I build other leaders? So that would be my 3.5. Sorry.
Awesome. I'm learning a lot. Window and mirror. I love that. So in the last part, where can they find Zach? Where can people find Zach?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably my favorite place to hang out. Zach Carlin on there, ZACH, CRLIN. We are getting a new website built, so I'm not going to give you our website yet, which is fine. But yeah, we're all over LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. If you want to learn a little bit more about what we do with our clients, SCN Get Started. So SCNGetStarted.com. And yeah, that's YouTube. Sorry, our YouTube channel, Summit Chasers. Thank you. Summit Chasers Productions. We're going to have some pretty cool stuff on there pretty soon as we start traveling the country. Maybe by the time this comes out, some of that will be out as we start traveling the country and highlighting some cool small businesses, local businesses out there all across the country.
Amazing. Thank you again, Zach. It was a pleasure talking to you as always. You're not only a great leader and a great athlete, but you're also you're a great human being as well. And I can tell people that firsthand from getting to know you. So thank you very much for being who you are. And for those who have any questions for Zach, just put your questions in the comments below, and I'll make sure Zach gets it, or you can reach out to him directly. But again, thank you very much for your time today, Zach, and I look forward to talking to you, as often as possible. And for those out there, tune in for our future episodes as well. And thank you for joining us today. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.